Well, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It is 10:01, and we're going to get started on curriculum and instruction. I'm excited to see everybody here today. Thank you so much. And if we could have some quick introductions of people who are new to me, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay. Kathy Gull?
Scott Murphy, Fellow Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Frank Feder, Director of Assessment, Data Reporting, and Strategic Improvement.
Okay.
Keith Harris, Chief, Equity Organization Development and Supporting CII.
Awesome. Wonderful.
And I'm Caitlin Moore. I'm the supervisor of the multilingual education program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And I am board member Janie Monnier. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I appreciate it. My only board comment right now is I love the work everybody's doing. I look forward to catching up with math policy, and we'll take a little moment to remember President Jimmy Carter, Department of Education. Take our 5 seconds. But yeah, so as we go through things today, to just, if there's anything that there's a concern for funding in the future about, please just point it out to me. I have my thoughts and ideas, but I just want to make sure I'm on the same page as everybody else and that we're working together. All right? Okay, thank you. And then we have the board minutes to, yeah.
Yep. If you want to just take a look at the minutes from
I took a look at them
January.
yes, I took a look at them in January. We missed February, unfortunately. Yeah. So it's just me, I guess. So yeah.
So as long as
Okay.
you support
I
the minutes
support
as
the
written.
minutes. The minutes are great as written.
All right.
I approve the minutes.
Then also, just for the record, there is nobody interested in public comment today, so that sheet is blank. We have some staff here supporting the next presentation, and so we'll hear from them a little bit later this morning.
Okay, wonderful.
So today you're going to hear from the multilingual education program, and then you're going to review the proposed new and pilot courses and some course reviews.
Okay, sounds good. That's what I got in front of me. All right.
So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore, and she can get started with her presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Morning. Glad to be here this morning. Glad I made it.
Yes.
I'm living day by day right now, so grateful for the flexibility there to let me present before I go out on leave. So as I mentioned, my name is Dr. Caitlin Moore. I supervise the multilingual education program, which includes our instructional program and our international office, but I'll share a lot more about that structure as we go through the presentation tomorrow. So to start off, here's our program vision as written. We provide multilingual learners, so you'll hear them referred to as MLs, with equitable access to comprehensive educational services as required under Title III of Every Student Succeeds Act. So we're one of those federal title programs. We also provide lots of support and services to our schools and our students within that body of work. And here's who we are. So we primarily monitor and implement that Title III program, and within that there are kind of two big buckets of what we do. One is supporting the language development program for our multilingual learners. That's our instruction in the classroom for MLs. And the other is providing some wraparound services for the broader multilingual community. And I'll go through each of those in some more detail as we get through the presentation. Just to set the stage and give you some context about our students. So we currently have just over 3,800 active MLs in the system. And we continue to see steady growth. So as you can see in the chart here, we've increased our enrollment by about 35% since 2021. And that number changes really every day. We enroll new students from all over the world every day, including transfer students from within the state who are also multilingual learners. So we are constantly monitoring that enrollment and then responding real time as schools need support. And our ML students are not a monolith. We have a tremendously diverse student group represented within this program. And I think oftentimes this data surprises folks, so we like to share it. We have some pretty significant linguistic diversity within the multilingual population. So students in our program enrich our schools with their languages and cultural experiences from all over the world. And this is also important from an instructional standpoint. Hi, good morning.
Started. We got here at the perfect time.
I apologize. No problem.
I'm Caitlin Moore. I'm the supervisor of multilingual education. We're just talking through our program. So this brings some interesting instructional implications too, to really get to know our students as individuals like any other kiddo. No two ML students are exactly alike, even if they come from the same language or cultural background. And so we really do run the gamut of a significant number of languages and cultures represented within our student group, all here in Frederick County, which is pretty special. as you get to know our program, you'll see a few different designations of how we describe students in their process throughout the program. So I also wanted to kind of provide some context so that you know what each of those terms mean. So you'll often see us refer to our students as multilingual learners. Those are our students who are active in the program. So they're students who come to us, we screen them on their English language proficiency, they qualify for the program, and then we provide active services. We also have some students that we classify as parent refusals. Those are that same group of kids, so they've qualified for services in our program, but whose parents have opted out of that service. We also have our potential multilingual learners. Those are typically our pre-K students. The Title III program is a 3 through 12 program, and so we do identify and kind of keep an eye on our students who are potential MLs in our program in those pre-K years, but they're not formally screened and into the program until kindergarten. We also see, these are some special groups of kids, are reclassified, multilingual learners, and exited. To get into the program, you screen on an English language screener. To get out of the program, you also take a state-mandated assessment, and then based on students' performance on that assessment, they exit from services. Once a student exits from those services, we're required by the state to monitor them for 2 years, just to make sure that they're still making adequate progress and getting what they need. During that 2-year window, students are in that reclassified multilingual learner designation. Once they're beyond that 2-year window, they move into that exited group. And this is a really special group of kids to keep your eye on because they do really well in our academic programming once they've left our program. And then of course we do have students who come to us and are screened for services but don't qualify in the first place. This is often our true bilingual students who speak another language in the home but have English proficiency, and so they test out of services. That's that last group. Most often you'll see those first 2 designations as part of our accountability course. All right, so as I mentioned, we kind of have 2 big bodies of work within the program. One is our instructional piece and one is our community outreach and supports side of the house. So I'm going to talk first about our instructional programming, and then we'll talk about the community supports as well. Overall, our program is really based in a co-taught model. So all of our ML students are in the grade level classroom, and then they also get additional support from a certificated multilingual education program teacher. We do have some more grade and level specific supports for different student needs within those groups. So at the elementary level, we provide some supplemental language comprehension instruction that's well aligned to the ELA program, the English Language Arts programs. And we have some specialized supports for newcomers, so students who come to us brand new to the school system and are doing some of that on board. At the secondary level, so middle and high, we also do offer some specific coursework to support our ML students. So whereas they're all engaging in kind of grade level content courses with their ML teachers and co-teachers, you may also see students who are engaged in specific coursework through our program, like English as a world language, that provides students with their targeted English language development support and also counts toward their graduation completer. So they're working towards that world language component. We have some specialized supports for long-term MLs, so students who have been in our program for a really long time, and those who may come to us with interrupted formal education. And then we also have some other options like our ESOL 100, which is a dual enrollment course for ML students. So we really are kind of represented across the whole spectrum of supports for our kids. In addition to what we provide in terms of academic support during the instructional day, we offer some supplemental programs as well. So we are really proud of our summer school program. That's a big time every year. We serve about 100 kids every summer, and they are high school students earning credits towards graduation. So we really do rely on that time in the summer to kind of accelerate some students through their math pathways, earn some great credit in a smaller group setting, which is really enjoyable for our teachers and for our program staff here. We also offer literacy and academic coaching, so that's more of like a tutoring model. So for some of those students who might need additional academic support, for our older students who might benefit from literacy instruction at the high school and middle school level, we provide literacy coaching. Our teachers and other instructional staff often use our platform. It's a data platform called Elevation. That's where we really monitor our English language development progress for our students. Our teachers also use it for documentation of accommodations and paperwork, and there's instructional resources in there as well. So that's an excellent supplemental research that a lot of our teachers use and enjoy because it makes their lives easier from a case management standpoint, but also offers some of those great instructional strategies as well. And then this year, we've started doing more Seal of Biliteracy testing. So for the Maryland Seal of Biliteracy, which appears on students' diplomas, we noticed when we did some data review over the last few years that our students were really underrepresented in the kids that were earning that Seal of Biliteracy, which was surprising. I mean, if you think back to that chart of our linguistic diversity, we have a lot of languages, home languages represented by the kids in our program. And so we've opened up some additional testing opportunities within our coursework within this program to get some of those heritage language assessments done. And so far, this year, we've been able to significantly increase that representation of our MLs who are hopefully going to be eligible then as they move through their coursework to earn that. It's really exciting. Beyond what we do for our kids, our central office here also provides a lot of support to our schools. That's a major function of our team. We do professional learning with our ME program teachers, but also lots of mainstream teachers. So if you think about that co-taught model, our kids are in lots of content classes. We support those teachers as well with strategies and resources to best meet the needs of students who are doing language work in addition to the content work in the classroom. We also do school-based instructional coaching and leadership support, so we will meet with teachers to model how to do some good instructional practices. We also meet with principals to talk through scheduling, resources for the community, all kinds of things. We're there to support our schools in that way. And then through our international office, which we'll get into here in a moment, we help schools kind of plan and implement family engagement events as well.
And that's at Waverly, right?
Our international office is over at Waverly.
Okay.
Yeah, you visited, I think, for the Judy Center visit,
Yeah,
right? Yep, that's our space. And so let's talk about the Waverly campus and some of the things that happen there related to our program. As I mentioned, this is kind of the second arm of what we do. We've got the instructional side of the house and then the community side of the house. So over at our international office, which is housed on the Waverly campus, we are often the first point of contact for families coming into FCPS. And so we do a lot of onboarding work and welcome work for our families as we kind of bring them through the pre-registration process. And then that really supports our schools in helping to gather all the documentation that we need for student enrollment. Also there, we provide language assessments. So this is where kids screen into our program. So once we've identified them as potentially being ML students, they come to the international office and we provide that language screener that's given to us by the state to determine their eligibility. We also have some folks over there who oversee our translation and interpreting services. So that's another key piece of Title III, is providing those resources to not just ML families, but any multilingual family in the system who wants to see documents written in Spanish or get communications in another language, providing interpreters for school events, meetings, IEPs, whatever schools and families might need. We also have a community engagement and partnerships coordinator. This is a Blueprint-related position, but we've had it for years. So when Blueprint came along and told us we needed to have this person in place, we were really lucky that we already had a great sponsor. And she does incredible work with our community partners, and then also kind of providing some of those wraparound services to families as they come to us. And then through that office, we also have a provider who does some counseling resources for ML students. A key part of that translation and interpretation work is related to how we communicate with our families. We have translation services, the interpreting services, and then beyond that, we also have some really awesome communication tools that we rely on to communicate with the multilingual population here in Frederick County. We rely on Talking Points, which is a two-way texting communication tool So far this year, as of the time of the presentation, we were at over 261,000 messages between schools and teachers, and that's direct points of contact between families and their school staff, which is really special.
Does it translate in real time? Is that what it does?
Yep. So it translates in both directions. So if you're a teacher texting me in Spanish, you text in English. I receive it in Spanish, I text back in Spanish, but you receive it in English. And it's checked by human interpreters as well. So there's like the AI layer, but then it's also checked by human readers, which is great.
Is it an app on the phone? Is it only on the computer or both?
You can do both.
Both, okay.
So if families don't have access to a phone or texting services, they can still access it through a web browser.
Okay. So do our libraries have it, for instance? Our public libraries?
Oh, no. That.
Just in case, families that don't have all the resources at home,
Yeah.
have that would be helpful. If they have, our public libraries have it as an option.
It's really useful. We initially had the license just for the ML population and ended up having to expand it because mainstream teachers for English-speaking families were also relying on it, and they love the instant communication and relationship building with our families. So
And are they using it also for conferences, or are they using something different for conferences?
something different for conferences. So beyond the talking points, we have our contract interpreters. So those are our in-person interpreters. They're primarily who helps with around conference time. And we cover requests from schools for parent meetings, IEP meetings, parent-teacher conferences, after-school events where they might need an interpreter, like a redistricting meeting or something like that. We send our contract interpreters. When we don't have a contract interpreter available, or if it's something like you just need to pick up a quick phone call home, we also have a service called Boost Lingo, and that provides over-the-phone translation services. And then, of course, we do written translation services for our systemic documents, which is that's part of our office's work as well.
All right.
So, as you can imagine, thinking about the growth chart that we saw at the beginning, our schools and our ML population is constantly changing, and so we really try to respond to that with the work we do here at Central Office to support the schools. And so part of that ongoing work is just to continue providing that professional learning and kind of those real-time touch points for technical assistance when schools experience new enrollments or have questions about the program, or maybe there's a teacher who wants additional support for working with a group of students. So we do a lot of professional learning and instructional coaching to kind of respond to those real-time changes. We also continue to monitor our ML student achievement. So in any of our systemic data meetings, our report card conversations, anything academic monitoring, we're always disaggregating by those different student groups and monitoring how our ML students are faring on local and state assessments, and then any of our other metrics as well, like attendance and all of those good things. We keep an eye on all of our student groups, and ML's included in that.
Assessments and tests are only in English, though, right? Or are they not able to be administered in their own language?
It depends on the test, and it depends on the language. So for MCAP, for example, there are some of those assessments that are available in Spanish for students that meet certain criteria set forth by MSDE, and then also we allow students and teachers to kind of work through practice items and opt for which test is going to be the most appropriate fit. So it really depends. Our local assessments, benchmarks, things, those are in English. The language of instruction is English. But there are options for some multilingual testing for kids.
Just curious. Okay.
Good question. And then, of course, we continue to coordinate our community outreach efforts with those wraparound services. So with community partners, providing engagement opportunities for families. That happens all year round, and we're always looking for new partners and new ways to fill the needs that we're seeing in the community as our families come into the international office and join our schools.
That's wonderful.
So with that, that's the big picture overview, but I look forward to answering any other questions that you have.
This year, you had 3 extra ML instructors that were added to the roster, I believe. And I still need a cup of coffee.
This budget cycle, we had none.
Yeah. Oh, no, none. Okay. I thought there was 3 extra, but I might be thinking like the previous year or something. Yeah.
Sometimes we do reallocate positions.
It's probably.
So, depending on how our enrollment trends look, We might have to shift some teachers from one part of the county to another to cover or account for growth. But this year we didn't have any growth.
Didn't have to do it. Okay. And do you have to share between schools, I imagine?
We have a couple itineraries.
Yeah.
They've gotten less and less over the years because our population is growing. So we have more schools that we can allocate a full-time staff member. But for some of our smaller programs, we still do use an itinerant model here and there where we need to.
Yeah, especially as we're growing. Yeah. We're going to have more schools and not enough teachers perhaps too. Yeah, as well. And then do we follow the coordinating services, I imagine, through the international office for our families, whether it's a touching base with a counselor or someone, just to make sure as they're trying to fit into the community, a social worker, that they're getting their needs met and so forth, and getting them in touch with resources?
We do a really good job of that. I'm really proud of the work that our international office team does. We really do kind of from start to finish until those families are embedded in the school, kind of follow every student case, and we keep touch with the parents. We keep in contact with the schools as well. So a student comes to us, we get to know them, we do some pre-registration work, we help them gather all the documents they might need, we do their English language proficiency testing, and then our team notifies the school with the information that they need. You've got this parent coming, here's the background, here's their educational resources, and then the family follows up at the school to complete and finalize that enrollment. But our team is kind of constantly in touch with the school and the parents until they've kind of come together, everyone's settled, and then then it switches over more to our instructional program, which is those of us supporting the teachers and the folks who are working directly with that student once they're embedded in the
And then that was going to be my next question, in terms of with the supports that you give to the staff and the educators, especially cultures that they're just not familiar with, so that they have some idea of just what to expect with the family and the student before, not to expect sort of responses and reactions that would be typical from our community that might be a little bit different. Do you give them some cultural supports and that sort of thing? Yeah.
So, and like I said at the beginning, every student is so different.
Yeah.
And so we really do take kind of an individualized approach. So we will often go out, let's say a school gets a newcomer student and the team is trying to figure out how best to meet their instructional needs. We have we have 2 teacher specialists here in our central office team, and they will go out and sit with that entire instructional team and just talk through what is the student's education background, what have they experienced before coming to us, and what sorts of recommendations do we have for then adjusting instruction, communication, whatever it might be to support them as they get into their mainstream coursework in the classroom.
Because even with patients, gender roles can be very different in different cultures, and meaning understanding how folks communicate. If you're not getting anything from one person, that just might be cultural, not because they're not understanding what's going on.
Right. And that's a big part of our professional learning too, is just kind of building that awareness of just the diversity within the cultures we serve and
Students to ask questions, that sort of thing. And then you were touching on the assessments and so forth. So what do those assessments look like for our multilingual learners as they're going through and how they're adapting and going through the program?
which ones?
Well, the academic assessments you were talking about, so math, English, how's that transitioning from when they first enter the program to when they exit?
So our students participate in all of them. There's only really one exemption criteria for newcomers, but even then we encourage our students to take any and all assessments offered up. So our students are working toward those same grade level standards. That's part of the beauty of the co-teaching model, is that our kids are embedded within that same grade level classroom work. We do see that students in the earlier stages of English language development might need time before they can kind of perform at the same level as their monolingual English speaking peers. But we also see over time, when students have gone through our program and are fully proficient, that even on some of those academic measures, those reclassified and exited students can outperform monolingual English-speaking peers on some of those standardized, like an MCAP assessment.
That's what I was curious about,
Yeah,
how that was
it's really cool.
handling. Yeah.
So let me put that in a larger context.
Sure.
So again, when you're looking at the ML student group, you're always looking at students who are, some of our students who are just learning English, right? And so we understand that's going to influence the results. But kids who have exited, our graduation rate for kids who exited last year was 96%, which is actually higher than our school system's average, which is already a high average. So it just kind of speaks to the work, and also it speaks to the time it takes for kids to be able to acquire English.
Yeah, and also the dedication of the families, I would imagine, too, to keeping the kids through the program and everybody working together to help those kids be successful. So that's amazing. Any questions?
No?
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was a wonderful presentation.
We really appreciate Dr. Moore and her team. They are absolutely phenomenal, and they are in schools all the time doing the great work. Thank you.
And challenges, before you have any challenges you're expecting for the next year or two that we should be aware of as we're doing everything, other than the obvious ones perhaps, but just to make sure. I like to have clarity. I don't like to assume anything, right? So you can just, yeah.
I mean, I think you mentioned budget constraints. We're always growing.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we're working with our schools all the time to kind of maximize, be most efficient with the resources that we have to support these students, and then also our instructional resources. And then, you know, an ongoing kind of, I won't say challenge, but something that we're always kind of keeping an eye on is those enrollment trends, because it changes. And we kind of joke in the ME world, every day is kind of like the first day of school. We don't really have, you know, the peaks and valleys of some other programs, because our kids come to us every single day we're enrolling a new family. And so that can present challenges for schools who are seeing new students kind of pop in mid-year and they need instructional support, or
Shift things around and
Exactly.
schedule and so forth, yeah.
exactly, or they get, you know, a large group of families all of a sudden, and then, you know, the student-to-teacher ratio can fall out of balance, which is why we do
Formulas all change.
some of that reallocation work. And then with that change that comes with this population, we're just always trying to kind of stay on the leading edge of what the research-informed instruction best practices are, what we're learning and hearing from the community, so that we can then empower the schools with that information, so they feel like they're really well-equipped to meet the needs of our students as they come in. So it's just ongoing work all the time.
And you mentioned talking points, and what was the other piece of software you used?
Boost Lingo.
Boost Lingo?
Boost Lingo.
Boost Lingo.
It's that phone interpreting service.
Okay.
You dial out a number, they connect you to the phone interpreter, or you could do like a three-way call, and that's really helpful.
That's a live interpretation, right? Yeah.
I'm curious to actually follow up with the public libraries. So they must have something, it may not be talking points, but they must have something.
I met with them recently, actually. We were talking about their World Languages collection, and they, at that time, it was maybe, I don't know, 3 months ago. They didn't have anything in place, but we talked about Boost Lingo because we were seeing so much success with it, and they were looking for an interpretation service. So you know, I just met with the leadership team over at Seaver Arts not that long ago to talk about it, and we recommended it because we've had a good experience. They're a relatively new provider for us. Previously, we used a different service that was much more expensive, and so we switched over to Boost Lingo, and we're seeing great results from teachers. They're able to connect with interpreters like within seconds, and our families are using this.
It's huge to be able to do that, yeah. I mean, even during COVID, that became even harder and harder for us to be able to do, to get interpreters for our patients and stuff, so. Yeah, and the talking points, is that one that we also pay for, or?
Yep, that's a paid license, and that's the one that we expanded for all teachers because of the need and the interest. It's a well-loved.
It is, yeah, it seems like. I just want to make sure we. All right, wonderful, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Brennan. The second part of our conversation this morning is one we typically do every March as we bring new courses, pilot courses, or revisions to curriculum forward. You may know that Board Policy 500 calls for board approval of all new courses at the secondary level and any substantive changes to curriculum. So what we've typically done is brought those new courses here to the Curriculum Instruction Committee, and if the committee supports them moving forward, they then go to the next month's full board meeting for approval. So we do have some of our staff here who've been more on the ground level developing some of these courses and new curriculum. Do you all want to just come to the table just in case they have questions? And so that they can meet you?
Yes, perfect.
This conversation typically comes to you as a written report, slides. Do you need a copy of this one?
I was gonna just hand her mine.
I was gonna pull up my computer, I just hadn't done it yet.
I can give you my hard copy.
Thank you.
some reason I started thinking my computer was accidentally printing out like copies, because every once in a while, and so I hit pause. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fine. I
So
broke
our
it.
staff here sort of have the bulk of what we're going to talk about this morning, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is James Sines. I'm the teacher specialist for secondary social studies.
Good morning. I'm Christine Pearl. I'm the supervisor of career and technical education.
Oh, yes, ready.
Good morning. I'm Diana Sung. I am the coordinator of dual enrollment and advanced placement for Fredericton.
So we will start with the one that is labeled new courses and pilot courses.
Okay.
There are 7 new proposed courses that are contained in this report. We bring new courses forward in 2 different ways. Sometimes there are changes at the state level that we just can't control, and we implement new coursework as a result. That's what you'll see in social studies. In other examples, it's sort of more organic here in the district, or in many cases, teachers, students in a particular school will propose a new course. So this happens in different ways. So we'll start in middle school social studies. This is one of the examples where there were significant changes at the state level to state frameworks in middle school social studies. So these will be the 2 newly organized core 6th and 7th grade social studies to be implemented first in 26-27 in grade 6 and the year after in grade 7. The state completely revamped the middle school social studies framework to teach world history with a geography lens instead of typically chronologically going through world history. So we bring this far in advance because there's a lot of curriculum development that will need to happen between now and then. So those are the 2 new courses in social studies. We also have an exciting new program in career and technical education coming out of our NJROTC program at TJ. You may be aware that the Aircraft Owners Association is here in Frederick. The national organization is housed here at our airport. They've developed a free curriculum in drone operation and other aeronautics. And so we're partnering with them as well as with the staff at TJ to bring in this program that culminates in students earning certification for drone operation.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that comes with three courses as a package, what you'll see in here. We also, related to career and technical education, we have more and more courses, what we call career pathways, that are taught by FCC. Aren't always dual enrollment in the traditional sense, often are really geared towards a specific industry certification. So as these grow and expand, we want to make sure that our students are getting dual credit for their high school coursework as well as industry recognized credentials through FCC. So that's the one titled Dual Enrollment and Career and Technical Education is a number of career pathways that are sponsored by FCC.
Okay.
And then the last one is an elective in world languages that's proposed as a pilot course at Oakdale, exploring Francophone cultures. One of those examples where it sort of came from student and faculty interest to develop an elective like that in FCPS. And then the rest of the report is just sort of backup documentation, information about specific standards and essential curricula that go with each of these courses. So typically, we entertain any questions you may have about the courses themselves or get into any of the content. And then if, like I said, if you generally support them going to full board in the April meeting, that would be the next step.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take another quick look, but I didn't see anything that I was like, okay, that seems
No,
I had a huge question about a new nation. I like the idea of doing the world history with a geography lens. I actually saw at one of the elementary schools the teacher was doing something like that, and it just made it, the movement of people, it made it make more sense, right? How people kind of moved and interacted with each other, so that's kind of interesting. How many of the assessments for the social studies and so forth, like how often is this changing for you as your curriculum and you're having to go back and forth and change it up? Like this?
There is a relatively new 8th grade required state assessment in social studies. So this is part of the progression to get them to that 8th grade assessment. I think we're in our 3rd year of that full administration of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was because of COVID, we had a completely different timeline. But yeah, the 8th grade is for social studies is the assessment
Assessment, yeah.
that takes place. it is for American Studies 1.
Yeah.
And some of the revisions, of course, align with those assessment limits and
Yeah.
so forth that we're proposing here today. As far as the 6th, 7th grade, they would be county-based tests.
Yeah.
So our benchmarks, so they would get 2 of those a year
Okay.
for each grade level.
Okay. I have, the more and more I read about the assessments, like the MCAPs and everything else, they keep changing, right? They keep changing what that assessment looks like, and the idea of trying to compare assessments against each other can start to get a little woolly.
They really do.
We're going to talk about that tonight at the KPI
Yeah.
presentation, just the number of changes we've had in the past 10 years in state assessments, and imminent changes that are coming in the next couple of years.
And so, I mean, when I look at that, just trying to, we want to keep changing the curriculum, we want to keep doing, pushing the bar and everything, but when we keep changing the assessments, we're also not getting great data on how we've been, right? So,
What's challenging is, if we're just tracking like whether or not kids memorize factual information, that's easy, but we're not. And so what happens is every time you create a new assessment, you have to engage in standard setting. You have to define like what's proficient, what's approaching proficiency. And that takes time. That also takes time for school systems to figure out what those standards are and then how do we teach to them. And so anytime you get a new assessment, you're going to see the results generally drop a little bit. And it takes time for us to understand what those standards are and then teach to them.
right. Yeah. I know no one likes to hear the word teach to them, right?
So I would say we're not.
But I know, I just want to be able to clarify.
No, I think this is an important point. We don't teach to tests,
Exactly,
but
yes.
we do teach to curriculum standards.
Exactly, yeah.
And so the standards kind of dictate what kids should be learning so that we make sure all kids are getting what's important. So
Are you feeling are you guys feeling the standards or what's being asked of the kids appropriate? And because sometimes I wonder I look at math policy, right? That's where my brain is at the moment. Wishing that we had more like stats and data analysis, which would also strengthen inductive reasoning, information literacy. And so I know we talked briefly about that. So when it comes to social studies and this sort, this is great, but how much is it also helping for kids to understand how government really does work? And what to actually expect from their local and state and federal governments.
So we have a government test in high school.
Yeah.
That is our other social studies test.
The other social studies test. I remember that test, yeah.
The
It's
eighth
still
grade,
similar.
test does, of course, go into Constitution and Articles of Confederation. It does have a very strong government unit that's always been the basis for us building on that through 9th and 10th grade.
I think our job too is also helping teachers, because take the 6th and 7th grade social studies, there may be different opinions on teaching world history that way.
In terms of the geography lens.
So, sometimes,
Yeah.
social studies teachers may prefer a different kind of approach in teaching history. And so those kinds of shifts, we think,
Especially when you're used to teaching in a certain way. It's a challenge. It can be a challenge to shift, for
so
sure.
that's a lot of what Mr. Hines does, is really supporting our teachers with understanding the written curriculum, but also helping to implement it.
And one of the challenges, other than the geography piece, any other challenges that you're facing with that?
So I think the biggest challenge is budgetary at this point.
Yeah.
Making sure that we have enough staff to be able to assist us in this endeavor, as we are.
How much staff do you have to actually help your social studies teachers out? And
Depends on budget.
Well,
it does, yeah.
You're looking at the one social studies teacher specialist
Wow.
for the district. He works alongside the curriculum specialist who was unable to be here today. So you maybe have heard us talk about some of the summer curriculum work that happens where we hire many of our teachers with some supplemental salaries to help with curriculum development. But that's an example of things that are really budget dependent to be able to continue those cycles of curriculum development.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you, what are the best practices you've found so far in terms of just trying to meet the challenge of getting that out to all of your teachers and stuff during the year?
Just regular PL sessions, being able to provide them with that. As we've been talking about this 6th, 7th grade course, there's definitely going to be a mindset shift in a historical chronological approach versus a thematic geographic.
Yeah, it is a very different.
So we will tap into our, AP geography teachers to help them come down and teach the 6th and 7th grade some of the skills that are, prominent in teaching a geography course versus teaching a history course.
Good luck, and maybe odds be ever in your favor on that.
What supports are you gonna need in terms of new texts, new materials in order to teach this
That's a great
class?
question. You've probably heard us by now talk about high-quality instructional materials. HQIM is the acronym for the state. And we've really gotten ahead of it as a district in English language arts and mathematics, where we've made significant investments in those instructional materials and textbooks. Social studies and science are coming next.
Well, there just seems, I mean, we did this at the charter school level, you know, the variety, the options for math and English were kind of a little more set. There was, you know, this track or that track or there was like 3 or 4 options, but when it came to social studies and science, there was a bigger array of things that, you know, didn't necessarily follow each other, or, you know, and we had one version, and then, so I just was curious, like, where we were, yeah, it was a different, those curriculums were harder to get materials for, you know, there just wasn't as defined, I guess, you know.
Exactly, and that's kind of the interesting point that we're in right now, because the state, MSDE, is getting more involved in new ways as it relates to these high-quality instructional materials that are used across the country. So MSDE, you can see it now has an HQIM website, and they're beginning to evaluate social studies and science. And MSDE will publish what they define as the most highly rated textbooks in social studies and science for Maryland. That's a work in progress at the state level, probably a year or 2 off. Timing with us when we're going to be implementing these new courses. So it's big time on our minds, and when we get there, it's going to mean an investment of some sort.
I know about with tutoring for kids in these subjects too. You know, we talked about the multilingual learners have, you know, their ways of getting some extra tutoring supports and so forth. What about for your social studies and kids and such? I mean, they do have government tests they need to pass, right? You know.
So, I mean, we cover some of these topics. Are we just trying to realign how and when and what order we cover these? Is that kind of what this is?
The 6th and 7th grade
Yeah,
this and social studies. You want to help me there, Mr. Hines?
Yeah,
What
sure.
the shift is?
So we definitely have a good portion of that information that's already covered. And again, it's covered from a historical lens versus this geographic lens. And the geographic lens is taking themes into account. Things like human systems, movement, human interaction with the environment. What we used to call the 5 themes of geography. They've changed those to some degree. But largely it's a thematic approach versus a historic approach. So that's kind of the real difference in approach. So it's not going chronological in a history type of course, it's going thematic in a geographic lens.
So it's less of the rote memorization, if I'm understanding, and more of like telling the story of how these things kind of came together and happened a little bit. Yeah.
Through the lens of
Yes,
geography.
Exactly, using geography as the engine.
And we had 20 years ago, you know, that when I first started teaching here, we had a geography course in 6th grade and 7th grade, and that, you know, changed throughout the years. I went back to that approach.
Okay.
Being that I think we've kind of lost some of those geographic. The fact that you saw it in elementary is fantastic. So, you know, we want to continue that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It also, kids are thematic, right? The storytelling, that's what they're going to remember. They're going to remember the story of how things happen. And it was interesting for her to do that. And I like, from an anthropology perspective, I obviously like that a lot. Because that's a lot of how we think about culture, you know, in a way. So I'm excited to see my kids go through that, because they're only in 4th and 2nd grade right now. So they'll be getting there in a couple of years.
We are very much in the, you know,
early stages.
planning part of
Yes.
it, but I think it's very exciting. I'm
Yeah.
super excited for the course and think that it's going to be a very good change.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm excited for that. All right.
So the Francophone,
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
so,
right?
I mean, that is obviously a little different. So way back in the day, when I took Spanish, French, and German in high school, we covered, obviously, a lot of the cultural stuff in addition to this. So this is not necessarily a language class. This is entirely more of a social studies kind of, not It's more under that lens rather than the teaching the language itself. Is that correct?
And,
Okay.
and part of this, what this does is it broadens opportunities for students who may take French 1 and French 2, and they still want to continue to learn about French cultures, but they don't necessarily want to take French 3. Or they're a little bit nervous about French 1, they can take this course first and then move into the actual language courses. It really broadens the offerings in our world language area.
Okay, but it's under our world language section, but it's not necessarily a, do they get language credits for that to count towards
It's an
the?
Elective credit.
An elective credit.
Half a credit, 1 credit or half credit, depending on which one they pick.
But the course will be developed by our world language team.
I mean,
Okay.
and it's also, I mean, from what it looks like here, it's going to really sort of investigate a little bit more like French history and colonialism and how it's affected in different areas of the world. Which is really interesting because French changes its tenor, I guess, its texture, depending on where it's at, right? I love that. All right. I mean, yeah. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, the aeronautics thing, sounds like that's gonna be a lot of fun.
And I think even our county sheriff's department just got some more drones. I mean, drones are being used in so many different ways, whether it's for law enforcement or if it's just for even biology, and for the Forest Service, in just different ways. So it's actually a really interesting sort of course credit to offer. Dual enrollment too, right?
If I can add, we have tried to add that for several years, but because budgetary could not. The benefit with running it through NJROTC is that based on the number of students we have, those instructors are provided by NJROTC.
Oh, that's perfect.
So the idea is to bring in another instructor at their expense, and they're providing grants, they're helping to cover the equipment. So this was a no-brainer. As far as we were concerned, it was a win-win for everyone.
Oh, no, I love that. So what are some other opportunities? 'Cause obviously, we've been talking about the budget. We're going to keep talking about the budget. Like, we're never going to stop talking about the budget. So, but when it comes to
I'm an accountant, I could talk about budget all day. All budgets all the time.
No. But in terms of thinking about the future for CTC and CTE, and you just explained really well, I think, right there with this program, one of the challenges was the budget, but being able to partner with NJROTC. So there are other partnerships, other things coming down, or that you would like to try and explore and look more into?
Yes, the answer is yes. But when you talked about change previously, and I wrote that down because we are in such a state of change in CTE, particularly related to the blueprint.
Yes.
I would say 50% of our industry certifications have been changed under the AIB and the CTE committee.
Okay.
So we have a big focus on that because our goal is 45% of all graduates, not CTE students, but all graduates will either earn an industry certification or participate in an apprenticeship by 2031.
Oh, wow.
So now that we have, again, of the offerings that we have to go back and look with these new changes. What are we doing to realign our curricular standards and adjust our curriculum to prepare those students and teachers, more importantly, for these new assessments? So that's a big area of change. And then also, MSDE is also creating a flex model that will be released very soon that will allow us to look at CTE a little differently, and with the idea that we're embedding more work-based learning experiences as part of the program. So great opportunities. We're just quite not sure what it's going to look like.
Right, yeah, but some great stuff on the horizon that I
Yes, absolutely.
As scary as some things might seem for some folks, there are also opportunities, right? And so we have to really just take advantage where we can of some of those opportunities. I love that, though.
And Mrs. Brennan is on our advisory council. She came to the last meeting, and I think you can attest to the fact that we have a very active business partnership group that is their role is to help us to determine what are the local workforce needs. And when we come up with a new program of study, those are things we look at. We look at the data, we look at workforce development, we look at the industries that are involved, and is there a need? And then, of course, student interest as well.
And there must be some challenges, too, in certain areas where, say, you have like an auto shop, I think it was at Brunswick High School has something like that, but then maybe there's not enough interest in that particular, some of the challenges of that, but then looking down the pike of a flex model and some of these other things, Brunswick getting replaced eventually. So what are some, I was talking to somebody from Ford who I think had been talking with somebody from FCPS about automotive technicians and trying to grow that and just some of the struggles of what that is looking like right now and so forth. So, I mean, are there other industries that you think maybe we're just not seeing as much interest in, but you think students have an interest in other places that we have? I know welding at one point, I was like, oh, that's fantastic. That's, you know, a great spot. But what else do you think is?
So a number of the programs you mentioned, we have 100% placement rate. So
So
students that,
yeah,
students that want to get hired after high school can immediately
Get placed, yeah.
In fact, we tell our industry partners, you can't just wait till they graduate and then approach us. You have to come in and be a guest speaker, and
Yes.
you have to bring these kids
you have to
pizza
be-
and donuts because they have their pick. I mean, it's almost like recruiting, which is really exciting. But yes, we're always talking to different businesses. Of course, AI is huge right now, and we're working very closely with Tech Frederick. That's a relatively new partnership because that's an area where more and more of our kids want to have internships and apprenticeships, and we just need to get the businesses on board and to understand that our students are capable of coming in and providing a return on investment. So
Yeah, I was talking with Kathy at FITSE, and she was really excited about working with you guys and trying to find some more apprenticeships and placements and such, and AI, speaking of.
I'll share it, just to piggyback on what Christine was saying, like a big part of this work has been partnering creatively with Frederick Community College around their career instructions. They have some credit programs that align with some of our CTE programs, and we've had students accessing that through dual enrollment. But the proposal on here is specifically around some of those non-credit programs that they also have, that as we see some of these changes statewide at CTE, we'll be able to provide a little bit more access for kids that are ready to do it through the college. You know, because we have, like Christine said, these welding programs have like 100% placement, and so if we have some kids who want to do the welding at it, so there are always like more kids who want to take it than we necessarily have seats for in all the programs. And so if there's more kids that want to take it, you know, FCC has a welding one, it's a credit program and things like that. So just the ability to serve Frederick County Workforce Services, which is housed with the Monroe Center over at FCC, like be able to serve that creatively without necessarily having to invest deeply in infrastructure, but instead leaning on our great partnership locally with FCC allows us to serve a few more students.
And then the county executive did recently do a study. You got to meet some of the consultants that were in town, and they're looking at how can we as a community, not just a school system and not just a college and not just
Address these needs.
address them together, and what resources do we have that we could perhaps share to make these programs better, knowing that we are in fiscally difficult times.
Brendan, I think you had a question.
Is this only available to the kids who are in the ROTC or is it other kids at TJ could take it too?
Right, so the instructors will be NJROTC, but the idea, as I understand it from meeting with the instructors, is the goal is to open it up so that it could also be a standalone CTE program of study.
Okay, but obviously taught at TJ, so you'd have to be going there or.
Well, no, we
otherwise-
have transportation to the NJROTC, just like we do with the
Yes,
Academy of Fine Arts.
Okay.
That makes sense.
There is a second report, if I could transition
Yep,
there.
sure.
The second report is proposed curriculum revisions. These are revisions to existing courses, not new courses, but
Oh, yeah,
That's at the beginning of
Oh, at the very beginning? Okay.
this one, there we go.
the title is Proposed Curriculum Revisions. These are existing courses in middle and high school that, again, based on changing state frameworks or just being in a cycle for us of being time to update a course. That's what you have before you there. These are all social studies, two of which are the core American Studies 1 and 2 courses that students take in 8th and 9th grade. Again, these kind of due for updating based on some changing state frameworks. And then the remaining ones, Law and Society, Geography, World War II, and Economics are all elective courses at the high school level.
So any questions about this revision?
No, just in general, when we put curriculum like this out, how much of it is up for kind of teacher interpretation to do the standards, and how much are we putting out as a system to say, use these things?
Certainly, in recent years, much more the latter. More of a prescribed scope and sequence, more of a prescribed timeline, and pacing guide. In the early days of the Common Core, like over a decade ago, there was a lot of sort of open-endedness of curriculum standards that teachers were more responsible for implementing, planning, and delivering in teams. Now, 10 years later, more now, as well as the adoption of these high-quality instructional materials, it's, like I said, the scope and sequence and pacing and specific units to be taught are much more prescribed than they were a decade ago.
But that's largely meaning, are we relying on that to be something we produce in-house, or is that something that we're largely paying to, provide the material?
To have be created?
Well, I mean, obviously, we need something to teach, so, are we, how much more, because when I look back to the budget, obviously, one of the one of the biggest areas of the budget that has outpaced the growth in enrollment has been the cost in the C&I section of the budget. So when you look and say like, okay, this many years ago, 5 years ago, it was X dollars per student, and now it's, it's almost twice per student what it was. Now, I know some of that is because we reallocate some of those costs out to other departments ultimately or whatever, but I'm just trying to get an idea of like, what are we doing different or having to spend money on different that maybe, that's kind of wrapped up in some of this stuff that, are we gonna have to buy, obviously we're gonna have to buy new textbooks, but then like what else? I mean, are we doing some type of subscriptions to things? Are we buying some type of canned curriculum? Are we, like that's kind of where I'm like, what are we doing there that's causing that outpace of, you'd expect it to kind of trend with the most of the costs trend, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm kind of thinking about.
Changes in curriculum and the time that's involved in just doing that?
Everything really that happens in schools, when you think about the student's day, beginning to end, runs through the curriculum and instruction department. And so the shift towards high-quality instructional materials, that's a costly effort. And it's something that we were required to adopt. And so that definitely is a significant bump in the budget.
So we're paying some type of third party largely to provide us these curriculum, some things one way or the other.
And much of what you'll see if you were to analyze that textbook budget in curriculum, much of that is the adoption of textbooks, K up through high school in English language arts and mathematics. That comes with a full comprehensive curriculum. At the elementary level, it's fully aligned to what you've heard and read about around the science of reading, ensure that every single child is ready to read in grade 3. And then those high-quality textbooks that come with now back to consumable workbooks that students bring home, and English and math all the way up through Algebra 2. We're going to be coming to the board, actually, there's a textbook approval tonight for the high school English language arts. That's part of this wave of curriculum and textbook adoption that we are really in the middle of, and social studies and science is on the horizon.
Yeah. Gone are the days of like getting the book from your instructor and wrapping it in brown paper and and all of that, right? It's, I remember those days.
Fantastic.
So, did you have other questions, Ms.
I was just curious, the world in spatial terms, we're talking about basically GIS and that sort of thing. I love that. That was an amazing, I took a course in GIS for a little bit, which was an amazing way to think about the world in terms of geography and so forth, but actually a very useful skill.
And we
as
are,
well.
our GIS person is on the textbook committee for that program.
Oh, perfect.
So, assuming there's consensus here, you'll see this at, this exact same report will go to the full board for the April meeting.
Okay. I think I'm good. You good?
And our third topic for today is to make some agenda adjustments to the rest of the year because we got snowed out.
And we know you're.
Oh, right.
So we have a proposal that we'd like to thank the team.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you guys
Thank
very
you guys
much.
for everything. Appreciate you.
We'd like to propose some adjustments for the next few months, the remaining months of this school year to catch up. As you know, on February 12th,
That was a lot. to
Math and
me.
Social Studies and FCASC had to be canceled. So the FCASC is really kind of together with Social Studies, so that's just one presentation.
Okay.
But we're going to propose that we move math to next month in April and move Social Studies to May to sort of sprinkle it out so we don't get too overloaded in one meeting.
Okay.
The April meeting, it's listed as 3 different agenda items, but based on some changes internally where it says media update and digital tools, that can just be one presentation.
That makes
So
sense.
we'll combine that together just for one holistic presentation. And it gets to some of those things that you just asked about, Ms. Brennan, not just media centers, but all the things you subscribe to. And so then we would add math to that meeting and then social studies to the May meeting. And then on June 11th, that item that says equity and curriculum, that was more penciled in by our predecessor, Dr. Cuppet, last year. That would make more sense to do in the following school year, in 25, 26, once we start the new cycle with the committee. So we're going to recommend that the June meeting just stick to the District Committee of Assessments and the virtual school, just to keep agenda items manageable in the virtual school.
Okay.
So if that seems like it works for you all, we'll clean all that up, and then it'll come to the board office and then be posted for the next month's meeting.
Okay, sounds great. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean,
Yeah. We'll make sure you got those topics.
environmental literacy and sustainability, we were talking about that.
That'll be, I'll think of that one.
I'll make it your
have,
piece back, because I do have them downloaded. I just don't want to be rude and sit there and start digging out my computer.
Oh,
Kind of,
You're all good.
Yeah, did you want to keep it?
no, I got it already. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any final comments, or are you good to
No, I
adjourn?
think that's good. I mean, it is now 11:02. That was my goal. So, 11:02, meeting adjourned, right?